And before I say anything, I'm extremely sorry. I was just sitting in the car for more than an hour, today. It was unbearable even for me, but sorry. And now I won't waste any time. So yesterday we saw how Upanishads were formed. Formed in the sense, how from Brahmanas we went straight to the Upanishads, the philosophy and everything. We saw that. Yesterday I also told you what Upanishads are and what they talk about, but we didn't see how many Upanishads are there or any such thing, and I want to talk about that. You will be surprised that if you count now, today, there are more than 200 Upanishads. Can you believe? Don't write this because this is not correct. The thing is, first, the main Upanishads are only 10. And why do we say these are the main Upanishads? Because Shankaracharya wrote commentary on them. And whichever Upanishad Shankaracharya wrote commentary on are taken to be the authentic ones. And you must have heard all these names. Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Chandogya, Brihad. You know these Upanishads. So only those Upanishads are considered to be a part of Vedic literature or Vedanta as such. But later on, anything which was remotely or even directly connected to knowledge came to be called as Upanishad. For example, there is, once this sectarianism in religion started, like Shaiva and Vaishnava and Shakta, you will be surprised. There are Shaiva Upanishads, Shakta Upanishads, everything, But these Upanishads are not philosophical in nature, they are religious in content. So they are not philosophical Upanishads. Then there are certain Upanishads like Garbhopanishad. You can guess what the topic is. So here they talk mostly about embryology, not of philosophy, a little philosophy maybe, but embryology is the main topic. Then there is Rasopanishad. You know what is Rasa? Rasa is mercury. From which?
Sorry. I mean, in this whole, I forgot to remind you about telephone data being switched off. People seem to have started facing problems. Thank you so much. Sorry, carry on.
So Rasopanishad is nothing but a treatise, not exactly a scientific treatise, but something to do with chemistry. In fact, from Rasa we get the word Rasayana, Rasayan Shastra, which is chemistry. So you know all this. So there were such Upanishads also. Okay, I understand that. In those days they wrote all these. But even now, in modern times, people started writing Upanishads. For example, there is Khandopopanishad. Can you believe that? Khandoba, Jesuri's Khandoba has an Upanishad written about him, which shows you that any text which was written to impart some knowledge and a little bit of philosophy was called Upanishad. There is Khandopanishad, there is Allopanishad. Can you believe? Allah. So even the other faiths started having interest in the word Upanishad. So just see the sanctity and authenticity by just labeling whatever you do as an Upanishad. And the one very strange thing that I have seen is Shailopanishad. Now Shaila is a mountain, as you know. So Shaila is a mountain, and what is Shailopanishad? In Christianity, there is something called, very famous thing, a Sermon on the Mountain. That is translated in Sanskrit and it is called Shailopanishad. So you will realize that these are not Upanishads, though they are labeled as Upanishads. So we will not consider them at all. We will only consider Isha, Kena, Katha, etc. Okay? And so anything which is written to give you knowledge about something will be called Upanishad. I mean, I won't be surprised if very soon there is I have already seen stotras dedicated to WhatsApp. So there might be an Upanishad called WhatsApp Upanishad, and I will not be surprised at all, because the word Upanishad itself becomes very attractive. And that's why there are so many Upanishads, we'll forget about all of them. When we say that these Upanishads are philosophical in nature, we know what the philosophy is. Yesterday I told you how the focus had changed from Brahmins to Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, etc. How the focus had changed from men to women, and how it had changed also, not all of them, but from adult men to young children. And we saw the examples of Satyakama Jabala and also Nachiketa. So this is how this entire society now is chasing knowledge. And what kind of knowledge is it? And why do we say it is entire society? I already told you about the two young boys, and there must be many more. But even the kings have started giving philosophical discourses. In fact, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where most of the important philosophical doctrines of Indian philosophy, they appear, there all discussions and disputations take place in the court of king of Vaideha, Janaka. And Janaka is not only a spectator. Believe me, when there are people who come from all directions to Janaka, he is not only a witness to all this, he actively participates in that. And not only that, many times he confounds the Brahmins by his own knowledge of philosophy. So I give you only one example, but there are many such. For example, I think Gargya Balaki. There is one Gargya Balaki who goes to a king, Ajatashatru, and tells him that please teach me the philosophy of the migration of soul. That Atma moves from one bird to other, and the king is embarrassed. So when you first read it, we think that, oh, obviously, because he is a king, and how can he teach a Brahmin? Because sociologically, in that hierarchy, Brahmin is higher, superior to him. But it is not that. The king is embarrassed, and it is said so clearly in the Upanishads, because he thinks, oh my God, I have to impart to him knowledge which was hitherto inaccessible to the Brahmanas. So just imagine, there was knowledge which was limited only to a privileged few of the Kshatriya Varna. Okay, so there are many such examples. One very interesting thing is, I think Uddalaka, Soma Shushma and Yajnavalkya. They three go to a king, and the king asks them the importance of Agnihotra, the philosophical explanations he wanted. So he wanted the philosophical explanation of Agnihotra. They try to say something. Yajnavalkya is the best amongst them, but the king is not satisfied. Okay, but he says, okay, Yajnavalkya has done his best, so I grant him first rank and I give him 100 cows. Okay. Then when they all come back, all these three are Brahmanas by Varna. So when they come back, one of them says, I don't think it's fair that we are kind of, we couldn't satisfy the king. So shall we challenge him for a Brahmodya? And Brahmodya, I think I told you, when you talk about Brahma, it is called Brahmodya. And Brahmodya is a discussion basically, or debate. And he said, shall we challenge him? And Yajnavalkya says, no, don't make that mistake. And a person like Yajnavalkya tells everybody that just imagine, if he is defeated, it doesn't matter, because people will say that three learned Brahmins, they defeated this king. But if he defeats us, and which is very likely, then what will happen? All of us will be put to shame. Or not only three of us, but the entire Brahmana Varna will be put to shame because we could not answer him satisfactorily. And so they accept, which means they were not sure of their knowledge of Agnihotra, the philosophical import of that idea, and so they go back. But later on, Yajnavalkya goes back to this king and says that I want to learn from you. This is very important. It's very important. There is one more example. I forget the name of the king, probably Pravahana, and he goes to Shakala Atmayan, and he tells Shakala that please teach me philosophy about Brahma and all. Shakala could not satisfy him, so they switch roles. Shakala becomes the Shakayana becomes the disciple, and the king teaches him everything about that knowledge. So just imagine that now knowledge is not the monopoly of the Brahmanas. And I have told this to you many times that this is a misconception that knowledge was monopolized by a few Brahmanas. Of course there were more Brahmanas who were learned, and of course there were more Brahmanas who were philosophers, but that doesn't mean others were denied this right. Yesterday I fleetingly mentioned one Raikva. I think I did. And then let us see that story. So there are a lot of Kshatriyas which we now know. Any problem with the webinar?
Let us see.
Okay. So Raikva is a Shudra. Okay, not even Vaishya, he is a Shudra. In that society, the lowest of the lowest. So he knows something called Samvarga Vidya. And there is a very knowledgeable king called Jana Shruti Pautrayana. And Jana Shruti Pautrayana, I must tell you one thing. Upanishads tell all the philosophy through stories. It never gives you a prose essay. It always tells you stories, and through the stories, the philosophy is imparted. So he is sitting in the balcony and he hears two birds. Upanishad doesn't forget to mention that Jana Shruti knew the language of birds. And the birds are saying, Ai Bhallaksha Bhallaksha. Hey Bhallaksha, do you know who is this? He is King Jana Shruti. He is very nice and generous and this and that. And then the other bird says, maybe, but he still doesn't know Samvarga Vidya, which only Raikva knows. Jana Shruti hears that, and he decides that tomorrow he will send his servants to find Raikva. They could not find him, but one of them does find him, because they are looking in schools and prestigious things. This Raikva was sitting under a bullock cart and all the time scratching his skin because he was suffering from a skin disease. Just to give you an idea that if you look at that person, you would never feel that he is a philosopher. So Jana Shruti goes there with maybe lot of gold and all, fees, dakshina, Guru dakshina, offers him and says, please teach me Samvarga Vidya. Raikva says, no, sorry, I can't do that. So Jana Shruti feels that maybe this is not enough. Next time he brings some more wealth, cows, this, that, and says, now please teach me. He said no. Then next time Jana Shruti says, okay, he realizes that the Guru is not exactly happy with what I am offering him. So he says, okay, this time I'll offer you half my kingdom. So just see the price of knowledge. They know the price of knowledge. He is ready to give away half of his kingdom. Which king will do that? But he says that. Raikva says, no, I will not give you my Vidya at all. The last time Jana Shruti Pautrayana goes there, he says, okay, I will give you my daughter in marriage. And this is the way, he wants to show that you and I are on the same level. As a Guru, you are very much superior to me, but as a human being, we are on the same level. And that is why, in the end, Raikva accepts. He accepts the moment the daughter is offered, he accepts it and says, okay, he gives him the Samvarga Vidya, which tells you that Vayurvai Samvarga, that amongst all the deities, Vayu is the most important thing, the distinguishing thing. And as we know, Vayu is prana, air, so without that no one can survive. And so story goes on, the philosophical discourse goes on. But what is important is that even from a Shudra, a person who is Kshatriya by Varna, superior to him, king by profession, I would say, again superior to him, and very rich. So socially also he is superior to Raikva, but he goes back, he keeps on going back to Raikva to learn more and more. So this will show you how the society is changing now and everybody is going after knowledge. Yesterday we saw Nachiketa's story. I will not repeat that. I think Satyakama also I told you, and so we will not go into that. But now you know that even small children are eager and interested in learning knowledge. So this is how the society was changing. Now I would briefly mention the main doctrines of Upanishadic philosophy. First of all, let us be very clear about one thing. You know that later on there are 6 systems of Indian philosophy, Sankhya Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshika and all those. The very word we use is Darshana, or 6 systems of Indian philosophy. Upanishads don't offer you any system as such, because there are many Upanishads. I mean, even if we consider only these 10 Upanishads, even then there are so many Upanishads. Each Upanishad belongs to a particular Veda. We saw that yesterday. So Chandogya, for example, which belongs to Samaveda, will talk more about the Samans and mainly Pranava. Pranava is Omkara, and Omkara Vidya comes there. Other Upanishads will talk about something else. In fact, in one Upanishad, especially Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka, which are huge, you know, they are not even big, they are huge. And we can clearly see that they have been composed by fusioning smaller pieces of philosophical knowledge. What do I mean by that? That maybe at one point they would talk about something like this is ABC. Later on, in the same Upanishad, you might find them saying that no, it is not ABC, it is C, D, F, whatever else. Which means people are thinking, and Upanishads, you can clearly see that the process has not stopped. The process of thinking, acquiring knowledge and philosophizing has not stopped. In fact, it goes on forever in the Upanishads. So which are the main, when we talk about Upanishadic philosophy, and I know many of you must be reading Upanishads, which do you think are the most important philosophical theories propounded in these Upanishads? Mostly, the first thing that we think of is Punarjanma, Karma, Atma, Brahman, etc. Right? So if you think of, you will soon realize that all these things are connected to each other. They are mutually related. Unless and until you accept the fact that there is Punarjanma, the Karma Siddhanta doesn't work at all. Because if I'm not going to get next birth, so what if I do some good things or bad things? They are not going to matter in my next birth because I don't have a next birth. But this idea of karma is so deep rooted in Indian psyche that, again I'll give some examples from Marathi because that is a language which I know best amongst Indian regional languages. And it says, there are so many proverbs like Bhoga apल्या कर्माची फळं. That is, now you have to bear the fruit of whatever you have done in the past. Karma. Secondly, you many times say कुठलं पाप केलं होतं मागच्या जन्मी म्हणून whatever. So you always keep feeling that the karma from my last birth is carried forward. And this is a theory which again, like I said just now, is related to Punarjanma. Because unless and until you have Punarjanma, karma wouldn't work. If you have Punarjanma, then the next question is, who gets Punarjanma? Because the body is burnt alive, it's burnt to ashes. So body certainly doesn't get Punarjanma. So what is there that goes in the next birth? So they thought of body as separate from something which is there in the body that keeps it alive, and that is called Atman. It is called Atman, it is called soul in English philosophy, it is called spirit sometimes, it is also called prana at times, but Atman is the word which we are going to use. In fact, Atman is the spirit that keeps you going, alive. Sat, Chit, Ananda, all these three qualities, just as they apply to Brahman, they also apply to Atman. So it is because of Atman, you will be surprised. I told you yesterday that there is a lot of linguistic similarity between Sanskrit and many other languages. In German, the word for to breathe is Atman. And Atman is to breathe. So you can see that somewhere, there was an original source of all culture and philosophy from where everything else has developed. So how is this Atman? Everybody has Atman. All living beings, whether birds, men, women, children, animals, everybody has Atman. In other words, all living beings have Atman. And with this, I come to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where we have a fantastic story of Yajnavalkya Maitreyi Samvad. First of all, please remember that in Shatapatha Brahmana, this story comes 2 times. I really don't know why this happened. And at one place, there are some additional verses and additional philosophy. So we can clearly say that that was added later on, but it is there. Secondly, even though it's an Upanishad, the chapters, the sub-chapters are called Brahmana. Yesterday we saw that there is no clear demarcation between the two. And what is very important is that it is not called Atma Brahmana or Yajnavalkya Brahmana or anything. It is called Maitreyi Brahmana. So just see how Maitreyi becomes the central point, the central theme of the entire dialogue. This is all conversation, and Yajnavalkya Maitreyi Samvada is a famous thing in Sanskrit and Upanishadic philosophy. I'll briefly tell you the story, and again, unless you have a story, you don't get attracted to that philosophy, because mere relating the philosophy is not very interested. See how it goes. Yajnavalkya, as you know now, that he was the court philosopher in the court of Janaka Vaideha. So he thought that I have done so much in my life and now I should retire. And so he decides to retire. He tells his wives, by the way, Yajnavalkya has 2 wives, which is also, again, like I said, see the social context also. One is Katyayani, other is Maitreyi. So he calls both of them and tells them that now I want to pravrajan. I want to choose the vanaprasthana. I don't want to stay here and look after the worldly matters. And before I go, he also knows, we have seen when we read Atharva Veda, how the co-wives, Sapatni, they fight with each other and curse each other. So he says, before I leave, I want to make division of all my property. Okay? And the Upanishad tells you The language is beautiful. I told you, the language is always simple and nice. Stri Prajna Tarhi Katyayani. Katyayani was Stri Prajna. I don't like this word now in the modern context, but yes, this is what she was. She was interested in everything that an ordinary woman who is not interested in anything beyond her house. She was a housewife. Okay? In those days, please don't compare. If anybody is housewife now, don't compare yourself with Katyayani. She knew nothing else but look after the household. Have maybe same type of vessels and clean them every weekend or something of the sort. She was happy to have that wealth. Maitreyi is called Brahmavadini. Maitreyi was not interested in this wealth. She asked her husband, and I always feel, this is Maitreyi, this is Yajnavalkya. She is a woman, he is a man. Not only that, she is his wife and he is her husband. That relationship also brings a lot of restraints on your talk and the way you ask questions. But now she is also grown up. She says, suppose you give me this entire earth. You are talking about the division of property. You give me this entire earth. Will it give me knowledge of Atman? Syam aham amruta tena. Amruta is also another word for Atma. In fact, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad itself tells you that sa esha antaryami atma amruta. So amrutatva is not immortality, not at least in Brihadaranyaka. It means knowledge of Atman. And the answer which Yajnavalkya gives is, according to me, even more philosophical and more important than what he talks about Atman later on. He says, Yathavai upakarnavatam jivitam syat tathaivate jivitam bhavati. Amrutatvasya tu na asha asti vittena. You must have understood what he said. He says, Yatha upakarnavatam jivitam syat. Upakarana, all the means and various instruments of happiness. They are instruments of happiness. You have a big house, 4 cars, whatever, gold, servants, everything. Does that guarantee you happiness? Does that guarantee you amrutatva? Does that give you peace? He said no. In fact, if you have a lot of money with the amrutatvasya na asha asti. If you are too rich, if you are too wealthy and too prosperous, then you will have not even a hope, a ray of hope of being amruta, which means you will not have that knowledge at all. Then Maitreyi tells him, then I don't want that wealth. What should I do with that wealth? You have been after this amrutatva, this atmajnana for all your life. Give me something like that. And then he says, this is beautiful, He says, sit down. I will tell you what Atmajnana is. Vyachakshamanasya me nididhyasasva. I love this, He says, now he is not a husband anymore. He becomes a guru. And he says, Vyachakshamana. I am going to analyze everything and tell you everything. Nididhyasasva. Pay attention. Don't let your mind waver from here and there. Now what I am going to tell is very important, very significant and also very difficult to grasp. So please pay attention. And then Maitreyi pays attention. The first thing Yajnavalkya says, and this verse, this particular sentence has become immortal, He says, Atma Atma va are no. Atmanastu kamaya pati priyo bhavati. Nava patyuh kamaya pati priyo bhavati. Atmanastu kamaya pati priyo bhavati. You are my wife. You like me. You love me. You don't love me because I am your husband. You love the Atman in me. We don't love the body, But what we love is the spirit of that man, his nature, his behavior, his reactions, interactions, everything. And he says this about everything. For her sons and daughters, for her relatives, for everything. And the refrain goes like, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam idam priyam bhavati. Now just see, Maitreyi is not formally educated in philosophy, right? All this time she was looking after the Gurukula. So what Yajnavalkya does, and this is done by all Upanishads, that they give examples and similes from the world of experience of that particular Shishya, that particular disciple. She says, okay. And then the last line of this paragraph goes like, Atma. Now he is talking about Atman, right? Atma va are drashtavyaha, shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nididhyasitavyaha. Atmani tu drushte mate shrute nididhyasite sarvam idam vidyatam bhavati. You can understand, I am very sure you understood everything. He said, Atman first has to be, now drashtavyaha doesn't mean see, but you have to know about it. You have to hear about it from the teacher. It's always important that Acharya Parampara is very important when it comes to Upanishadic philosophy. Shrotavyaha, mantavyaha. Then you yourself think about it and then you keep focusing on it all the time. Nididhyasitavyaha. Once you do that, sarvam idam vidyatam bhavati. Once you know Atman, then entire world you will understand very quickly. Maitreyi says, okay, but you said that you have Atman, I have Atman, she has Atman. I don't see Atman. How do I know that there is Atman? This is one more thing which Upanishads do, which is not done anywhere else in the world. Upanishads actually open a laboratory to prove their philosophy. You know, they make experiments. I'll show you how. He says, okay, bring me some water, I'm tired. So she brings him water in a pot and he says, put some salt in it. So she put some salt in it. Then he said, please taste it. Taste it from here. What is the taste? It is salty. From here, salty. From the upper layer, from the lower level, wherever you touch, the water is salty. So you accept that there is salt everywhere. Now show me where the salt is. Can you see the salt? You cannot. And so similarly, you cannot see Atman even though it is present in all of us. Now such a nice example. I mean, I know that today's young boys and girls would come up with saying that, oh, she could have easily evaporated the water and all. But let us just see the spirit behind it, and this is how he tells. Again, she is not convinced, so he gives her example. She says, I can't see. If I can't perceive something, I can't believe it. He says, okay. The other day I told you about 3 types of instruments. He gives examples of 3 types of instrument: Veena, Sushira, Shankha, and the one Tata, Dunduvi. He says, do you hear the sound? She says, yes, I hear. Somebody was playing Veena, so she said, yes, I can hear the sound. Okay. Do you see the sound? No. Do you see the person who is playing the Veena? No. And you still hear the sound, which means there is something which you cannot see, but you still perceive. See, all these examples you may not like in 2019 because we have become too intellectual. We have become so intellectual that we want proof for everything. Everything we want a logical proof. But there are things which sometimes are beyond logic and beyond proof. Let me give you a parallel example. You all know Ramanujan, right? You must have seen that probably beautiful movie, a biopic for Ramanujan. And we all know that when he went to England, his Professor Hardy, he knew that Ramanujan can solve everything. He could solve any question, any equation satisfactorily in no time at all. But Professor Hardy used to say, the answer is right, but where is the proof? And Ramanujan wouldn't have any proof. It was something like an intuitive knowledge to him, and so he wouldn't have proof. So Hardy could not believe him in the beginning. Later on, of course, he realized what this person was. So unless and until you have proof, you don't believe. And this is precisely what Yajnavalkya is trying to do, to tell Maitreyi how Atman is everywhere. And he tells her, there are many other examples he gives, but we won't go into that. She says, how will I understand Atman? He says, Vijñātāram are kenava vijaniya. The person who himself is the person, one who not person, the principle who himself knows everything. How can you know that? I mean, there is no science, there is no logic. The only thing is you can experience it. Anubhuti. So you can do that, but there is no knowledge. And the best part of this conversation, it's just like in Gita. In Gita, what happens is Arjuna keeps on asking questions. I love them, you know. It shows two things, that he is paying attention and he is thinking about it. That's why even when you all ask questions, I am quite happy about it. So similarly, Maitreyi keeps asking questions and queries. She has many difficulties. And Yajnavalkya at one point says, you know something? And if a husband says that to a wife, it's a great compliment. He says, all this time, you were only Priya to me. You were dear to me. Now you have become Priyatara. You have become more dear to me. You have become dearer to me, because Yajnavalkya basically is an intelligent person and he expects that from his wife. So ultimately Maitreyi is convinced, and the last sentence is, of course, and then Maitreyi does pranam to him, she does namaskara to him, because now he ceases to be her husband, he is her guru, and then he lives for Vanaprastha. Now what is the most important thing in this? First thing is, there is a story. So when there is a story, it becomes easy. Even for Gita, there is a story frame. You all know that, right? How there was a war and how Arjuna went there, etc. So when there is a story, you get more interested. Then there is a dialogue. Dialogues are very important. Conversations make things not only easy and simple, but attractive also. You know that if you have done Western philosophy, you would know that there is Plato's Dialogues. The name of the book itself is called Dialogues. So there are dialogues through which, philosophy develops. And asking questions. Asking questions really makes your brain sharper and more alert. Forget about philosophy. Maybe many of you watch Kaun Banega Karodpati. When he asks a question to the person who is sitting next to him or opposite him, all of us start thinking, what do you think? Is A the right alternative, or maybe it is B? So questions always make you think, and that is why question answer method brings more knowledge out of as a product of the whole conversation. And second, last and most important is, as I told you, there are experiments. He brings a pot of water, makes her get some salt and puts it there. Then he makes somebody play veena. He will do everything. There is also one more example that is also beautiful, so I'll tell you. At one point Maitreyi says, okay, you say that Atman and Brahman are same. Oh, I forgot to mention that. He says that Atman and Brahman, the ultimate reality, is the same, and it is from Brahman that this entire universe is created. So Maitreyi says, come on, this is too much. You tell me that from such a small Brahman, this whole universe is created? And you know what example he gives? He says, the other day when I came home after teaching, the whole house was full of smoke. Why was it? She said, oh, that day by mistake, I had put ardra indhana, some wet fuel in the fire. So if there is wet fuel, there is so much smoke. He said, do you mean to say only one little twig which is wet can produce so much smoke? She said, yes, of course it does. This is an example from her area of expertise, kitchen. He takes that example and tells her, if you accept that, why don't you accept the fact that Brahman, at least this twig, had no life of its own, no power of its own, and Brahman is, what all it is. So why don't you accept that for Brahman also this entire universe is created? And she is convinced. If I give you examples from your own life, if I talk about KBC, you will be convinced that yes, questions do make us think. So similarly, this is what happens about Maitreyi and Yajnavalkya. This is a beautiful Samvada. There are many books which are written about it, and I would suggest that at least read the translation of this. Such experiments are always there in Upanishads. There is one story of Uddalaka Aruni. This Uddalaka Aruni is a guru himself, but he tells his son Shvetaketu to go out. There are many people who would say that no, the child must stay in the hostels so that he will learn the ways of life. So he says, go somewhere, learn, and come back when you are 24 years old. Okay? So Shvetaketu goes and comes back. And when you have half knowledge, you think too much of yourself. Similarly, when Shvetaketu comes back, he is all arrogant, arrogant with his knowledge. And the father looks at him, talks to him, he realizes what the matter is, and the father says to him, so what all did you learn? And he tells that I learned this, that, this Veda, that Brahmana, whatever. He said, and did you learn anything about the ultimate reality? He said, no, I didn't learn anything. He said, then sit down, I'll teach you. He gives him 3 examples. This is again a very famous dialogue. He says, so do you see all these clay pots of different shapes and sizes all around us? He says, yes. So what are they made of? They are made of clay. So if you understand what is clay, you will understand the formation of all the clay pots, right? Because the only difference is Nama and Rupa. It changes its form, Rupa, so you give it a different name. That's all. But what is the ultimate truth? Mrittika ityeva satyam. So clay is the truth. These are only differences in form and name. He is trying to take him from this world to, from Brahman to how we are all formed, Only name and form is changed. Everything else remains same. The spirit remains the same. Then he also gives him an example of gold ornaments. Same, that there is this gold, that gold. But if you know gold, then you will understand everything. But the third is very nice. I like that because again, I come back to my same theory that try to see the society and the kind of life they lead. He says there are so many loha things here around. And which are they? He gives some other examples, but one of them is loha money. And when you say money, it probably always has a hole in it. And that's a difficult thing. But of course, we know that even Indus Valley has those beads and all. So he talks about loha money. Not only that, he says, look at this nakha nikruntana. You know what is a nakha nikruntana? A nail cutter. And he says, look at this nakha nikruntana. Even that is made of loha. So even in those days, there was a nail cutter. This is what surprises me more. Of course, the philosophy, no doubt, is great, and sometimes it is even beyond our reach and grasp. But even then, these things also become important to us. So he's finally convinced Shvetaketu that okay, there is a principle and which is a present everywhere. Then he says, but you said again the same thing. You said Brahman. From Brahman everything is created. How can that be? I don't think, because probably his guru never told him that about Brahman and all. That is okay. So he says, that is Uddalaka Aruni says, I'm tired now. I'm hungry. Get me an udumbara. Udumbara, which is a fig. And in those days, that was probably the best fruit that everybody ate. Nowadays we don't eat udumbara, but in those days they did. And yesterday I told you how Indra tells the advantages of doing exercise and keep on walking all the time. There he uses one thing, gatha, which I must tell you at this stage. He says, Charanvai madhu vindati, charan svadu udumbaram, suryasya pasya shremanam, yo na tandarayate charan. He says, you know something, if you keep walking, you will get honey. If you keep walking, you will get sweet fruit of udumbara. And look at the sun, who never stops walking. Remember, try to go back to what we learnt in Rigveda, that Surya doesn't stop, the sun doesn't stop, it goes to different direction to give light. So Suryasya Pasya Shremanam, who is never tired and never stops his walking. So this Udumbara, he says, go get me an Udumbara, he brings. Then Uddalaka says, so where did you get it from? He said, I got it from that tree. Oh, that huge tree. Yes, that huge tree. And he breaks up the Udumbara, and you know that Udumbara had seeds which are even smaller than fig, anjir. So they are smaller than the fig. And he said, how come there is such a big tree? He said, see, I told you, these young, half-educated boys, they think too much. He said, you don't know? You just plant one small seed and you will get this huge tree in no time. He said, oh really? You believe that? And he says, yes, I know that. I believe that. And he said, okay. Again, like what Yajnavalkya said to Maitri. If you believe that such a small seed can create such a huge, you must have seen Umbara Vruksha, Udumbara Vruksha. It is big. It is not like that Anjira creeper, you know. So he says, if you believe that, why don't you believe that this entire world is an expression of Brahman, which is so ananu, arasvam, adirgham. He will describe that later. But why don't you believe that? And after that, again, you know, like I said about Yajnavalkya, even about Uddalaka Aruni, I want to tell you one thing. The last thing he tells his son, who is also his student now, he says, Shraddhasva Saumya. Saumya is, oh child, start having faith in someone. For last 5 days I am saying something to you. Why do you take notes and why do you listen carefully? Because you believe, you have a Shraddha that what I tell is not wrong. Right? So unless and until you have Shraddha in your teacher, you will not get any knowledge. And this Shraddha, it's such a wonderful thing, which is translated in English as faith. But I think it is an inadequate translation. And there is one sukta in Rigveda entirely addressed to Shraddha Kamayani, and that is so beautiful. Even there, the last line of the sutra goes like, Shraddhe Shraddha Payasvana. O Shraddhe, O Shraddha, please give us Shraddha in our hearts. So Shraddha is one thing that unless and until you have that, you will never learn anything. Is this clear? So after this, we are going to today I think I'm going to speak only up to 6:40 or so, I was told, or 6:45 at the most. So I'm kind of hurrying through many things, you know. I told you that not only men but even women were philosophers in ancient India. There was, can you name any? Maitreyi. I would say Gargi, yes. Maitreyi is not exactly a philosopher in the sense that she doesn't have a philosophy of her own. She is asking very basic questions, but she is a sadhaka. She is on the path of learning philosophy, and therefore we must appreciate her also. So Maitreyi is a philosopher. I'll come to Gargi. There is one, what should I say? She is not anonymous, but she is unknown, you know. Her name is Sulabha. They are all called Brahmavadinis. Philosopher is another word. Philosopher in Sanskrit will be translated as Brahmavadin or Brahmavadini. So Sulabha Brahmavadini, we don't know much about her, unfortunately, you know. I told you that a lot of our treasure, a lot of our knowledge was just burned down or lost due to various reasons, and probably Sulabha's philosophy is gone. But you know why Sulabha is important? I'll give you the proof why she is important. You know that we have all these funeral rites, and in those funeral rites we have tarpana. You know tarpana, that you take water and from your thumb you put it down and all those things. So during that tarpana, if you belong to Rigveda, there are 16 or so rishis to whom you offer this tarpana. And Sulabha Brahmavadini is one of them. I'm so amazed to note this, you know, that there is one woman who is sitting in the same line as 15 other great rishis, and we have to offer her tarpana too, which means she really must have done something really great. And then of course you have probably all heard this story of Adi Shankaracharya, where he goes in search of finding the house of Mandana Mishra, and then the women who are washing clothes at the river tell him that where you will see that even the parrots talk about Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. That is Mandana Mishra's house. He goes there. He has a big debate with that. And the most important thing is, who is the judge? Who decides whether Shankaracharya won or Mandana Mishra won? Remember, the judge has to be better than both the parties. And who is the judge? Mandana Mishra's wife, Bharati. And so I really feel, you know, that even though not a lot of things have been written about her, Bharati must have been a great woman, a great philosopher. In fact, later on, Mandana Mishra becomes Shankaracharya's student, that is another thing. But Bharati, she defeats Shankaracharya in some discussion. Of course, that topic about Kama Jivana and all was not something which Shankaracharya knew, and therefore he lost the debate. But the credit of being the only person to defeat Shankaracharya in a debate goes to Bharati. And therefore, I really feel that Bharati must have been very intelligent one. I'm going to speak at details about Gargi. But before that, let me ask you one question. So I told you at least 4 or 5 women who were philosophers. I told you about 21 women who wrote Sanskrit Suktas, and they are included in the Rigveda, which means there must have been many more composed by women. How many women philosophers do you know from the West? I'm not talking about scholars of philosophy. I'm not talking about professors of philosophy or students of philosophy for that matter, but about philosophers as such. Do you know anyone? Till I take a 1-minute break, think about it. Now I am asking you a question, so I'm making you think about it. Yes, 1 minute. Go ahead. Huh?
Someone Simone Weil,
But
20th century.
20th century, not we are talking about ancient Indian philosophers who belong, I mean, they were there at least 2000 years back, and Mandan Mishra's wife in 8th century, but otherwise they are all ancient. We know Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, this, that, even in the 14th century, Kant, Hegel, we know all of them, Descartes, but we don't know any woman philosopher from that age. This is what I want to tell you, that when the very fact that there are women philosophers tells you how, not only how intelligent women, no, I can't say where, how intelligent women are, but also how much chance and opportunity they were given by the society to come forward and say what they wanted to do. That is my point. And in those days, this was done very freely. And as I said, these are only some examples. But I'm very sure there must have been many more who did that too. Now, before I go to Gargi, I would just briefly say the relationship between Atman and Brahman. Most of the philosophy ultimately boils down to Advaita. I say most because I know there are various other schools like Dvaita, 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 Shuddha Dvaita and all those things. But in fact, see, even the title of our lecture series is Journey from Veda to Vedanta. And what is popularly known as Vedanta philosophy later is Advaita philosophy. I know somebody told me that we are reading Viveka Chudamani, and then once you come to Shankaracharya, it is all Advaita. Now what is Advaita? Dvaita is dichotomy, that there is a difference between the two. Advaita is, these English words I just don't like. Advaita is non-dichotomy, which means being one. And who is one? The Brahman, which is the ultimate reality, and the Atman, which we all have, is one and the same. And Atman, please don't say that it is an effect or product of Brahman. It is an expression of Brahman in individual person or human living beings for that matter, anyone. So this is called Advaita philosophy. This is propounded very well in what we call later on as Brahma Sutra. This Brahma Sutra, again, Shankaracharya wrote a wonderful commentary on that, and unless and until you read Shankara's commentary, you cannot understand anything from Brahma Sutra. But Sanskrit language also has one advantage and disadvantage at the same time. You can interpret it the way you want, like the lawyers do. You know, from one sentence, a lawyer can prove that I am guilty, or he can also prove that I am not guilty. The same evidence, right? Similarly, Sanskrit language can be twisted. I mean, it's so elastic. It can be twisted and turned to prove anything. So there are 5 different interpretations of Brahma Sutra, which I would just briefly tell you. One of them is Advaita, which I told you just now, Shankaracharya. Dvaita, 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 that is, in some parts there is Dvaita, in some parts there is no Dvaita. Shuddha Dvaita, complete Dvaita, that is Atman and Brahman are same, and sometimes, you know, they don't even use the word Brahman. They start talking about Purusha Visheshaha or Ishvaraha and all those things. Later on in Upanishads, if you have noticed up till now, never has the idea of Ishvara entered Upanishadic philosophy. But later on, especially when Madhvacharya talks, he talks only about bhakti of Ishvara. When Yoga Sutra come, they only talk about, I mean, they talk about everything else, but they talk a lot about Ishvara. In fact, out of the six systems of Indian philosophy, three are called Astika Darshana, who believe that there is God, and three are called Nastika. So, forget about that. But the same Brahma Sutras, which are not part of the Upanishads, please remember that, but they are, what should I say, essence of all the Upanishads. So the same Brahma Sutras are interpreted in different ways, and all those different ways are still practiced by that particular sect in India. But most common is, of course, as I said, Vedanta. And now we come to Gargi. Gargi is one name, you know. I mean, people always say that, oh, if somebody, especially if a woman is a good orator, knowledgeable person, she would always be compared to, oh, she's like Gargi and Maitreyi. Now we know at least about Maitreyi. We don't know anything about Gargi. I mean, in my life, I have come across many Maitreyis, the girls who are named as Maitreyi, but only one Gargi. There must be many, but Gargi is not a very common name, whereas Gargi was way superior to Maitreyi. Who was Gargi? Gargi again comes in the court of King Janaka Vaideha. He is always referred here as Janaka Vaideha. Now also see this. Here we have Upanishads on one side, where the king of Videha is called Janaka. Called in the sense his name is Janaka. The same Janaka you meet later on in the epics, in Ramayana, and see the continuity. Just see, I mean, I'm not going to say that he was probably the same Janaka who was called the father of Sita and all that, but the continuity always shows. Gargi, probably that's her Gotra name, she belonged to Garga Gotra. She is also called Gargi Vachaknavi. Now, if you ask me, anyway, first Shankaracharya tells you she is called Vachaknavi because she was the daughter of a Rishi whose name was Vachaknu. And therefore, you know, patronyms are very common. Even if you see in Mahabharata, they are all like Draupadi, Janaki and Madri, either by country or by their father. They are named like that. So he says she was a Rishi Kanya. But if I feel that this is injustice to Gargi. Maybe she was a Rishi Kanya, maybe she belonged to one Vachaknu, but she was called Gargi. Vachaknu is also a good orator, one who speaks well. And in Sanskrit, there are various qualities about a teacher which are given, but one of the best ones that I like, and which Kalidasa tells you, is, see, there is some competition between the two gurus. They're always easy, you know, that who is better of the two. And they say, what should be the criterion? That one says, oh, you know something, one who has the most knowledge will be the best guru. And the other one says, and that according to me is more important, Sankrantiranyasya. Whatever I know, whatever the teacher knows, to transmit that to others is the best teacher. And that is really true, you know. So, the teacher has to be a good speaker. He has to know what to say, how to make the subject interesting and all. And similarly, this Gargi also was a great orator. The way she speaks, you will be surprised. Let's go back to that period. It is at least 2000 years old. We don't know the exact date of Upanishads, but it is almost agreed that they come before or at least contemporary with Buddhism, and they certainly come before Panini. So anyway, Gargi Vachaknavi also was a court philosopher in Yajnavalkya's court. I told you about in Janaka's court. Yajnavalkya is one of them. And he is not the only one, there are many. So once Janaka said I have so many philosophers in my class. Why don't we decide once that who is the best of all? And the one who is the best will take away those 1,000 cows which have gold ornaments put on their horns. So along with the gold ornaments, he will take the cows. Everybody was waiting, that how to prove that I am the greatest one. Nobody speaks anything. There are many people. There is Uddalaka, Kahola, Ushasti. Nobody comes ahead. Then at one point, Yajnavalkya says, Saumya, he is talking to his student. He said, Saumya, take all those 1,000 cows and take them to our Gurukula. Which means he is trying to tell everybody that I am the best one. Nobody says a word, but then there is kind of commotion and they decide that we should have a question-answer series. So next day, everybody, one by one, people come, ask some question to Yajnavalkya about philosophy. What is the exact nature of Atman? What is Karma Siddhanta? How is Brahman different from Atman? Okay, all these things they start asking. And he also asks them questions. After 3 male philosophers come, it is Gargi's turn. She comes and asks him. Again, this also comes from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. She asks him, Hey Yajnavalkya, all this world, kasminnu khalu tat otam cha protam cha iti. In what is it contained? Ota and prota. In Marathi we use this word just to show that something is full right up to the brim. Ota and prota is the way a cloth is woven, ubha dhaga and adva dhaga. So she says, Kasminnu khalu idam otam cha protam cha iti. Then he gives some answer that this is in water, apaha. And apaha, kasmin staha otascha protascha. He says, oh, in Vayu. Now just see this. First it is Prithvi, then it is Apa, then it is Vayu, then it is Akasha, then Loka, Chandra Loka, Surya Loka, Akasha, and ultimately he gives the answer as Brahma Loka. And then she says, she doesn't get defeated, she doesn't get discouraged, and she is the least scared person in that court. So she says, Kasminnu khalu Brahma otam cha protam cha iti. And then Yajnavalkya says, Gargi, ma atiprakshihi. You are asking too many questions and something which cannot be answered that easily. In fact, the next word he says is, Anati prashnyam vai devatam pruchasi iti. Anati prashn. You are talking about something, devata, he uses the word, about which there can be no questions. You cannot ask that question. How do you know Brahman? He gives, Shankaracharya tells you how you know Brahman, either by Agama or by Guru Parampara. Agama is Granthas, all the texts, or by Guru Parampara, you will know them, not only by asking questions and debating. Really, there are many, I told you just now, that you have to experience certain things. You cannot be taught them, nor can you read about them and know it. Right? Suppose you want to know what exactly is a burning sensation. I'll give you different explanations. It feels like hot, and then you want to scratch it, you want to put your finger in water or whatever. But unless and until you burn your finger, you never know what a burning sensation is. So there are certain things which we learn only through experience. So he says, Ma ati prakshi, anati prashnyam vai devatam pruchasi iti. And then Atha Gargi Upararama. And then Gargi stopped at that. Okay? Because there is one more thing which Yajnavalkya tells everybody, even to Gargi at this stage. He says, if you ask too many questions, your head will break and fall down. which means your brain will not be able to take that. Okay? So she keeps quiet. But just see what she does. She goes home maybe after 2 more days, when I think Kahola and someone else has come and asked questions. Others ask questions which are very basic. What is prana? What is vayu? What is this and what is that? Nobody has gone up to this level of questions that about Brahma. After 2 days, she comes back again. She is the only one who comes back. And I always feel, that I don't want to say that Yajnavalkya does not want to give her the answer, or not that he doesn't know the answer. He knows the answer, obviously. He is a great philosopher. But, excuse me, but there is something called a male ego. And if a man thinks that a woman understands much more than he does, there is not only professional jealousy, but there is also this male ego which comes in between, and that creates a problem. And that is why probably he could have easily told her, that's what I think, that come later on, I will explain everything to you. But he says, Murdhate vyapaptatiti, your head will fall down. And this has happened to one person, I think. After Gargi, there is one Ushasti or Kahola, I don't remember the exact name, whose head actually falls down in the court. He dies. Okay? So Gargi goes back and comes after 2 days. Now just imagine a place from where you have been ousted actually. That it's one nice and decent way of saying keep quiet and go back home. Right? This is what Yajnavalkya has done to her. But see, she comes back. And what is very important, the description is amazing. You just cannot believe it. Remember, 2000 years ago, a woman who is sitting there alone in that entire court of philosophers, and there is a king in front of her. She says, hey Yajnavalkya, I want to ask you only 2 questions this time. Will you help me? Will you please give me the answer? I think Yajnavalkya must have been surprised too. That, oh my God, no one else came back and this woman did. So he says, okay, I'll allow you. And she describes herself. She says, Yathavai Kashova Vaidehova Ugraputraha. Ugraputra, a brave person, a brave soldier from either Kashi or Videha. She has to say Videha because Janaka is the king of Videha. So either from Kashi or Videha goes to the war. Dvau Banavantau. Only 2 arrows he has. But he goes to the war because he is Ugraputra. He is brave. He is sure of what he is doing. Sapatnati Vyadhino. Sapatna is enemy. And Ati Vyadhino is those who will pierce the enemy. That is which will not kill maybe, but they will pierce the enemies. That's what she says. Like that I have come here. I have only 2 arrows in my quiver. I have only 2 questions to ask you, and please give me answers to that. When she must have said that, can you imagine the reaction of the people around? It is not only what she said, but how she said it. The amount of courage she has, the amount of confidence she has, self-confidence she has is really amazing, which no other male philosopher had shown in that court up till now. And she asks him questions. She asks him questions about Brahma. And you know what she asked? This is very important to me. I told you that the ultimate end of all philosophy, and for that matter, ultimate end of all science, is to know about the creation of the universe. How this universe was created. there are professors of physics in front of me and I feel kind of embarrassed to say this, but this is what Gargi says. She says, Yajnavalkya, explain to me, whatever is here, like Dyava, Prithvi, Surya, Chandramasau, so she first takes the names of all that has some special meaning related to space. Kasmintani, Otani cha, Protani cha. And her next question is, Yat kincha, Bhutam, Bhavyam, Bhavishyat cha. Past, present and future. Now she is talking about the temporal dimension of the whole thing. Kasmin tat otam cha protam cha iti. And these questions themselves, they combine philosophy and science. And I really am amazed. I'm talking too much about movies maybe, but there is a beautiful movie, a biopic again, about Stephen Hawking. And in that, it's a movie, so I liked it. But there are some things which are shown and demonstrated there in a very simple way and simple language. And Stephen Hawking talks about singularity of life, time and space, that they are both same, and he says much more which is beyond me. But what Gargi is asking you is similar to that. She says, this time and space, where are they contained? In what are they contained? Who sustains them? What sustains them? Not who. What sustains them? And then Yajnavalkya talks about Brahma. And he tells her how it is Brahma which sustains the entire universe. Forget about time and this and that, but he gives wonderful examples, you know. He, of course, says all this and then says, Etasya va prashasanasya krute gargi prashasana. It is because of its governance that Prachyaha nadyaha shvetebhya parvatebhya etya prachyaha pravahanti. Shveta parvata. What it must be? It is Himalaya. So, it is because of the governance of this principle that the rivers flow the way they are given the direction. The mountains stand. Surya Chandramasau vidhrutau tishtataha. Both the sun and the moon, they stay away from each other. They don't bang ever. The moon never falls down on the earth. And he explains everything so beautifully. And then he tells Gargi that Gargi, it is because of Brahman that this entire universe moves. And at the same time, how is the Brahman? Brahman is amazing. These words you always know, but let me just say them. It is a Hrasvam, a Dirgham. It's neither short nor long. A Sthulam, an Anu. It is neither big nor small. It is neither wet nor dry. All kinds of adjectives he takes and he says, Brahma is beyond that. Brahma is not this, Brahma is not that, Brahma is not this, Brahma is not that. The entire description of Brahma is always given in the Upanishads as na iti, na iti. This is about Atma, neti neti Atma, but same description comes for Brahman also. And this is how Yajnavalkya tells Gargi what Brahman is. This is how we come to know about Brahma Vidya. And there he talks about Brahma. And in today's terminology, I would just say this, only this thing, that Brahman is both macrocosm and microcosm. It is everything, and therefore Brahman is all pervading. There are so many Upanishadic passages, you know, which tell you about Atman, about Brahman, but they more or less tell you the same thing in a different way and in a different context. That's about it. There is one Upanishad, I forget the name, but there is one Upanishad where it is said that when it comes to Brahman, the students have asked the question, how is Brahman? Can you describe him? And the teacher, the Upanishad says, Gurostu maunam vyakhyanam shishaha chinna samshayaha. As an answer, the Guru just keeps quiet. Instead of describing Brahman, he keeps quiet because there is nothing that you can talk, And the students are chinna samshaya. All their doubts are gone. So in all these Upanishads, you will always find such philosophical discourses. But in the beginning, yesterday, I had told you that there are many Upanishads where you may not find such deep wisdom. For example, Kaushitaki Upanishad. In Kaushitaki Upanishad, apart from this philosophy, there are some funny things, There is a lot of psychology, a lot of metaphysics, which is fine. Even psychology is fine. But then there are love charms, the way we saw about them in Atharva Veda. There are love charms. There are some sacrificial rites and rituals. Forget about that. There are some rituals which are directed towards annihilation of enemies and prevention of death of your children. Now just see what kind of range is this? From love charms, philosophy, psychology, black magic of some sort. It is everywhere and still it is called Upanishad. So please remember that not in every Upanishad you can find deeper wisdom. You may not, but these 10 Upanishads which we have seen, there are. And I told you about asking questions and how it is popular. One of the Upanishads, as you probably know, is called Prashna Upanishad. In Prashna Upanishads, the only thing that happens is there is a teacher and there are students. They ask him question, he gives the answer. The second one asks him a question, he gives him answer. We have already seen Kathopanishad. I won't say much about that today. Then there is Kena. Kene Shitam Manaha. Who impels your mind? This is the first line of this Upanishad. And therefore, because of the first word, it is called Kena Upanishad. So there are some Upanishads which do discuss philosophy, but most important Upanishads that discuss philosophy are Brihadaranyaka and Chandogya Upanishad. Especially in Chandogya Upanishad, there is one thing I forgot to mention, that is called Shandilya Vidya. There is this great teacher Shandilya who talks about Atman. See, later on Yajnavalkya and all, they do talk about Atman. Yajnavalkya talks to Maitreyi about Atman. But Shandilya is the first person who talks about Atman. And he describes there how Atman is. And later on, the idea of Brahman came, and then both of them are supposed to be one and the same. Okay? So, this much for the philosophy of Upanishads. I know. Even one Upanishad. Oh, by the way. Yajnavalkya, when he tells Gargi about all this, that there is time and space and all the Prachanadya, etc. In the end, he tells her one very good sentence. He says, Ya evam viditva preti. Preti is dies. The one who dies knowing this knowledge about Brahman, savai Brahmana. He is called Brahmana. And Yaha aviditva preti, the person who does not know this and dies, he will be called Krupana. Remember yesterday I told you Krupanam haduhita jyotirha putraha. So he will be called Krupana, that is, he is not a real Brahmana. Again, one more example for you to know that Brahmana was not always, it did not always refer to the Varna. Okay, I have kind of wound up a lot of Upanishadic philosophy, I know that, but I think I have given you the basics of Upanishads, Upanishadic philosophy, and also some important incidences like Shvetaketu Samvad or Gargi, Maitreyi and all those. Because I want to talk about two things now. One is, I told you yesterday, we saw that Upanishads came as an action and reaction to the yajna. And one of the Upanishad tells you, Plavayete adrudha yajna rupa. Yajna rupa plavaha. The boats, because the Brahmanas tell you, the Brahmana Granthas tell you that if you perform a yajna, you will go to the other side. Swarga. You know, they always talk about Swarga Kama and all. But they are not real. Adrudha. They are not firm. They do not serve this purpose. In fact, there is a hole in it. And therefore, yajna should not be performed. There is another Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, which talks of two types of knowledge. Vidya. Para Vidya, Apara Vidya. Para is Brahmajnana. The greatest of all, that is Brahmajnana. And Apara Vidya is Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda and Shadanga. If we have time, I'm going to say something little at least about all the Shadangas. Also note that one of the Upanishads is already talking about Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, which means now the Vedic Samhitas are complete. They are already there as we have them now. So what is Shadanga? Many times we say this sentence, Brahmanena Nishkarano Shadango Vedaha Adhyetavyaha. A Brahmana should always learn Vedas. Here Brahmana, the word Brahmana is used in the sense of not only a knowledgeable person but also probably belonging to that particular Varna. Please note, I am not using the word caste. I am using the word Varna because castes became more rigid and came later on. In Vedic times it was only Varna. So what are these 6 angas? Anga is ancillary literature, things, literature which help you to understand a particular Veda. There are commentaries. For example, on the Rigveda, there is a wonderful commentary by one Sayanacharya. And unless and until you read Sayana, you cannot take one step ahead, you know. You must learn Sayana because he comes from Indian tradition. He knows Veda. He must have been a practicing Brahmana. And therefore Sayana's commentary. And there are many other commentaries too. But these Shadangas, they immediately follow the Vedic literature. And what are they? They are, first one is Chanda, second one is Shiksha, third one is Kalpa, fourth one is Jyotisha, Vyakarana and Nirukta. They two come in pair. The first pair is Chandas and Pratishakya. What is Chandas? Chandas is the meter. So, Tripada Ashtakshara Gayatri. Gayatri meter is 3 pada. There are 3 lines of Ashta Akshara. Of 8 into 3 is Gayatri. And why do you have to learn that? Because you have to sing them to the tunes and the exact accent. And therefore you must know the meter. But meter later on became so big, you know. I mean, beyond, like stoma. The other day we saw what stoma was. You know, Tat Savitur Varenyam. What is that mantra called? Gayatri. It is called Savitri in Rigveda. It is not called Gayatri. Savitri because it is addressed to the rising sun, that is Savitru. Savituhu idam Savit. Savituhu iyam Savitri. And therefore that is called Savitri. It is composed in Gayatri meter. And later on, people forget about the inner meaning and they go only by the outer form. And Gayatri took a huge dimension, so much so, not only that mantra is called Gayatri, but I know that in the north there are temples to a goddess named Gayatri. I mean, Gayatri, at least in Vedic times, had nothing to do with that, it's only a meter. But that is Chandas. In school, many of you must have learned this famous sutra, Yamatara Jabhana Salagam. If anybody knows that, you will remember how Chandas becomes important, and we have to find that. Along with Chandas comes Shiksha. Shiksha literally means that which enables you. Shaka, that which enables you, it's Shiksha, and enables you to pronounce the words in the right way. Because we have seen now that entire Vedic literature was transmitted through oral tradition. And therefore, this Shiksha becomes important. It tells you so many things, how to give accent, how to use particular word and all those things. There are also texts called Pratishakya, Pratishakha. For every school of Veda, for Rigveda there will be another Pratishakya, for Yajurveda there will be another. For example, Rigveda says Purusha Sukta, Yajurvedi people say Purukha Sukta. And Ya many times changes to Ja. In North, they always say Jajman. Instead of Yajamana, they say Jajamana. So such things happen, and the best example which I must tell you is, because in the first lecture I said that Agni Mile Purohitam. I told you that La is not there in Sanskrit anymore. It wasn't there even in classical literature, but it is there in Vedic times, because the Pratishakya tells you Ajmadhyastha Dakarasya. Whenever there is Da in between two vowels, that Da is to be pronounced as La. And if there is Dha, it is to be pronounced as La. So there are so many things, and such things happen. Orthography, the way you write is different, and phonetics, the way you pronounce is entirely different. How do you write the word si, ha? You write si with a dot on C and her. And how do you pronounce it? Simha. I'm very sure you all say Simha. So where does the word come from? Similarly, in Rigveda there are many things. There is one word, Pavaka. Right? Pavaka is the one that purifies. It is invariably pronounced as Pavaka. And that somehow sounds very beautiful to the ears. But this is what Pratishakya and Shiksha will tell you. One more thing is the word Surya. For many times, instead of being pronounced as Surya, it will be called Suraya. Splitting it, Suraya. Or Tva, Tuva, something like that. The pronunciation matters the most. There is one shloka, one verse which tells you that if you do not pronounce anything properly, it will have a bad effect on you. And they have given an example how the word Indra Shatru was pronounced in the wrong way and the meaning changed and whatever. So, Chanda and Shiksha are important for the right pronunciation. That is the first stage of learning any Vedic Samhita. Next, you must know more about it, about what is the meaning and all. And for that, you need Vyakarana. You know that especially when it comes to Sanskrit, people always keep blaming, that, oh, it's because of that Vyakarana, Rama, that I did not continue Sanskrit. But Vyakarana is beautiful. Do you know that? Every language has Vyakarana. It is not that Marathi or English doesn't have Vyakarana. So every language has Vyakarana, and it helps you to understand the meaning. That is very important. Suppose there is a Marathi word Zata. It is written like Za and Ta with a not nasal, but a dot on it. Nuswara it is called. Now, how do you know whether it is a verb which says like it goes, or it is Zata, like with which we used to, not we, but our ancestors used to pound the flour, So how do you know that? Unless you know the grammar, unless you know the accent, you will not know the right meaning. So Vyakarana is important. What is Nirukta? Nirukta literally means analysis. And this particular Nirukta, which is Yaska's Nirukta, is so beautiful. I tell you, it makes wonderful reading. It tells you, it not only discusses meanings and all, it takes a particular ruk from Rigveda, for example. And that ruk says something about Vrutra and Indra Sangharsha, the fight between Indra and Vrutra. And Yaska gives you the meaning and then says, Ko Vrutraha, who was this Vrutra? Tvashtra Asuraha iti aitihasikaha meghaha iti nairuktaha. We who follow the Nirukta tradition think that he was a megha, a cloud. But people who follow the historical approach, they say he was a demon. Vrutra was a demon. Now what is this? This is the beginning of religious studies, you know. And when we say that we never studied religion, it is not so. We studied it, but later on, because of various political and social situations, this tradition stopped in between. So Nirukta is something which is very beautiful. So now you know how to say it. Now you also know what its meaning is because of Vyakarana and Nirukta. And now comes the Vini Yoga. I told you, Aviditva Rushim Chando. So Vini Yoga, you must know the yoga, that is the employment of that particular ruk in a particular yajna. Therefore, you have to know everything about yajna, right? It is necessary that you know that, it is imperative. And how do Kalpa and Jyotisha help you? First I will talk about Jyotisha. There is a Jyotisha Grantha, small Grantha actually, by one Lagadha. And Lagadha tells you a lot about astronomy in those days and how to calculate dates, Tithi and Amavasya, Purnima, etc. Why do you need that? Because I told you the other day, if I have to perform an Ashwamedha, that is if the main ahuti of Ashwa has to be offered in the fire next year on Chaitra Purnima, 1 year back I start. So you have to know everything. When is Chaturthi? When is Purnima? When is Upavasatha? When is this, that? When should I do Avabhruta? There is a very common ishti called Darsha Purnamasa. Darsha is Amavasya and Purnamasa is Purnima, of course. You have to know when Darsha and Purnamasa come. Like I said, otherwise we look at Kala Niraya and say, oh, in the morning it is Naraka Chaturdashi and in the evening it is Lakshmi Puja. This is what's happening today. So all these things you have to know to perform a yajna. And now we come to Kalpa Sutras, 5 minutes. Now we come to Kalpa Sutras. These are all called sutras. And they are of 4 types. Shrauta Sutra, Gruhya Sutra, Dharma Sutra and Shulbha Sutra. You will not imagine what a great treasure of knowledge all these are. First I will talk about Dharma Sutras. Dharma Sutras of course have nothing to do with religion at all. We have seen that the word Dharma is not used in this sense. Dharma is duty. Dharma is social behavior. Dharma is code of conduct. And therefore, Dharma Sutras are more or less like law books. They tell you what you should do. They tell you what you should not do. Why you should not trouble others. If you do, what should be the punishment. It is all about this. Of course, it is in the context of yajna and in those times, but that's fine. Like, there are so many laws which have come up today. Cyber crime. Had you heard this name 50 years back? Forget about cyber crime. The other day, 3 or 4 months back, there was the first ever crime committed in space. You know that? This woman astronaut, she committed some banking fraud or something. The first space crime. Now they have to make new rules for that. So according to the times and the social conditions, law has to amend, and Dharma Sutras do that. Then let's do Gruhya Sutras first. Gruhya, as you can see, is pertaining to home. At the time of marriage, the Agni in which the husband and wife have given the offerings is brought home, and that is called Gruhyagni. You also know about Shodasha Gruhya Samskaraha. Actually, in Maharashtra, for some reason, for some strange reason, the word Gruhya Samskara is used only in the sense of death. Right? But anything which is performed on that Gruhya Agni is called Gruhya Samskara. So when a child is born, that is a Gruhya Samskara. Medha, Janana, etc. are Gruhya Samskara. A wedding, Vivaha, Upanayana, all are Gruhya Samskaras. And Gruhya Sutras describe how a Gruhya Samskara is to be performed. They give you all the details, the mantras that are to be chanted along, and all those. In this Gruhya Sutra, Ashwalayana Gruhya Sutra, which belongs to Rigveda, while discussing the Upanayana Samskara, it says, Avruta eva kumarye. When you perform Upanayana for a girl, Kumari, see to it that these mantras are not recited. Okay, the mantras are not recited, but nowhere does Gruhya Sutra tell you that Upanayana is meant only for boys. This is important. Okay, so Gruhya Sutras are also important. Then I'll come to Shulba Sutra. Shulba literally means a rope, a piece of rope actually. In ancient Egypt, and I think in ancient India of course, and all over the world, the way they started geometry or drawing figures was with the help of a rope. How do you draw a circle? Hold one end under your heel and then turn around, and then you get a perfect circle. We have done that in childhood. From this, they explain not only the geometry but also some principles of trigonometry. In Bhandarkar, we have books where professors have translated Shulba Sutra. Once I tried to read them when I was a postgraduate student, but it was beyond me. Even now, what is so called as Vedic maths, they give you some rules which are very different from what we learn. So Shulba Sutras are basically geometrical and trigonometrical things. And why are they important to know about them? You know something? When Agni is prepared for a yajna, it is kept on different types of mounds. Chiti, it is called chiti. So it is made from various bricks. Okay, they are built. It is called Shena Chiti, Chakra Chiti, some other Trikona Chiti. And what does that mean? That mound will be a perfect triangle. The other one will be like a chakra, that is a circle. Shena Chiti will be like in the form of a bird, hawk. Shena is Sasana. The other day I told you I had gone to see this Shena Chiti in Kerala. So that is the one. And the most important thing is their area is the same. So if you have a Shena Chiti or Chakra or Trikona, the area is same. And they tell you what brick should be of which measurement. Because some are triangular, some are slightly curved. It is amazing to see, The Shulba Sutras give you all the details, and hats off to their knowledge. I mean, I already told you that their knowledge of mathematics was amazing. And this is one more example. And now I come to Kalpa Sutras. Kalpa Sutras actually tell you how to perform a yajna. They are literally instruction manuals for performing a yajna. And they are very useful. They are very useful not only to those people because they perform yajnas, but even to us. And Kalpa Sutras, for example, they will tell you how to perform a yajna, who will sit where. Unlike Brahmanas, they don't have Arthavada. They don't tell you that if you don't face the east, somebody will die or something of the sort. Never. But they tell you how everything is to be done, which mantra is to be chanted at what time. And I think they were written probably at a later date, because later on people started forgetting how to perform the yajna. Started forgetting in the sense it wasn't very frequent, it wasn't very common practice that yajnas were performed, and so people did not remember. I remember once, 5 or 6 years back, a friend of mine came to me and she said, "Which book shall I buy for my son's wedding?" And I thought she wants to give him a gift or something. I said, "What kind of gift you want to give him?" She said, "No, not gift, but how to proceed about it. What to do after which ceremony, which ritual." So there are books about that. She showed me a couple of them. Maybe you also know. So when the tradition becomes kind of, I won't say entirely disappeared, but when tradition becomes veiled, such things have to come. And so Kalpa Sutras also came. But still, remember that whether it is Kalpa Sutras, Griya Sutras, Rigveda or Yajurveda, according to Mundaka Upanishad, it is Apara Vidya. It is kind of a secondary knowledge. Para Vidya is still Brahma. And that is why it is very important that we end with this Upanishads. Just give me 1 minute, please. You have seen that during all these 5 years, I kept talking to you and I never used any notes or piece of paper. But today I have got something with me. This was written by my teacher, who was my first Sanskrit teacher, and in 1965 she wrote it to me as an Ashirvada, as a blessing. And this is from Upanishads, and I want to read it out because it is in her handwriting. Okay? It's wonderful, this Upanishad, Upadesha, which is given to what we call Snataka. Snataka is a graduate. And you know why he is called Snataka or she is called Snataka? Because in those days, when they passed out of their ashrama, the Guru would give them a snana. And now, even today, we use the same word, Snataka, to say graduate. Okay, here goes Guru Padesha. Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Swadhyayat Ma Pramaditavyaha. You can understand the meaning. Pitaram, Mataram, Acharyam, Tatha Atithim Api, Devam Vidhi. Jata Sandehe, if you have a doubt, Vidvan Purushaha Prashtavyaha. Go and talk to a knowledgeable man. Yani Asmakam Sucharitani, Tani Upasitavyani, Na Itarani. We have, as teachers, everybody is a human being. There must be some follies. Don't follow them. Only Sucharitani, follow them. Yashaha Sanchinu. Kirtim Vruddhim Gatam Kuru. Esha Adeshaha, Esha Upadeshaha, Evam Acharitavya. I think that is the note on which I would stop. But I love to tell stories. You know that, and I will tell a last story and I will stop in 2 minutes, promise. So, this is again a story. I don't know who wrote that and where, but I read this long back. There was one Guru who gave instruction to many of his students for 12 years and they all passed out, Snataka. When they left, they gave him Guru Dakshina, and there were 3 who were very bright, and he gave them a handful of rice grains as his prasada, whatever. And he said, "This is my prasada, please have this, carry it with you. And come and meet me exactly after 10 years on the same day. After 10 years, 2 students came. They touched his feet and all that, did all those pleasantries, and then he said, "So what did you do with the prasada which I gave you?" The first student said, "Oh my God, it is prasada. So I gave it to everybody in the family. We cooked, made rice out of it, and everybody partook of it," which is what we do with prasada. The second one said, and he asked the second one, "What did you do?" He said, "Oh, it's your prasada. I have put it in a silver box and it is right there near my gods, Devara. And I always worship it and think of you every morning when I go there." The third one came quite late and he was carrying maybe 10 bullock carts followed him, And the Guru said, "Why are you so late?" He said, "It's because of your prasada." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Instead of eating or keeping it in the Devara, in my God's house, I sowed it in the field. And then there was more rice. And then I again re-sowed it. And you can imagine now, as a token of my gratitude, I have got some rice for our Gurukul. So now I have given you maybe only a few grains of rice, but it's your choice and your decision to decide whether you too want to spread this along." Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And there is only one more thing, because I was told that there is a concluding session or whatever, valedictory session. But I do want to say, please don't use the word concluding session. Because this is not a concluding session for you all and even those who are doing the webinars. In fact, this is the beginning of your Vedic studies. Please go ahead. Jata Sandehe Vidvan Purushaha Prashtavyaha. If you have any doubt, you can ask anyone. And especially in Pune, there is no dearth of Vidvan Purusha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sucheta Bhai. And I certainly did not say concluding session. I will never say that. I never say it to anyone because I know this is, when we have started on a journey, we cannot stop. So this is only a halt and it has to continue. Now, you all have to tell me that do we want to take a question answer session, because yes, we have to have some formalities for last 5 minutes. We have to felicitate her and propose the vote of thanks. And then after that, she is available. If you would like to, you could speak to her personally and get your answers. Yeah, I think, do we agree with that? If everybody agrees, then we go ahead. Otherwise, we can exceed the time.
Just a moment. Instead of talking personally, all of you can't talk to me personally. I would suggest that when I send you the list of that short note, I will give you my email address also. That will be simpler. So you can write at your leisure, ask at your leisure, and even I can do that.
I think we all agree with that, and whatever I get from her, I will immediately share with you. So not to worry about that. Those who have attended previous sessions here have this experience that we have always been sending regularly whatever we got from the speakers or the scholars here. So I think with that, let's have a small felicitation. I'm sure all of you have enjoyed it a lot. In the meantime, let me tell you a couple of things. One is, if you haven't submitted, if you haven't received or after receiving not submitted the feedback form, please do take it from me, fill it up and give it to me, because that helps us improve every time. After the session, there are small snacks arranged for everyone. That also is a part of routine here, that we would want you to have some informal interaction, at least for some time. So, may I now request Shri Sudhir Vaishampayan, our Honorary Secretary, to felicitate Sucheta Bhai. Thank you so much. Mr. Chitra will be proposing a formal vote of thanks, but A very sincere, heartfelt thanks to Sucheta Tai and to all of you personally from me and on behalf of academic development programs run by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, supported by Infosys Foundation. And very, very heartfelt thanks to Infosys Foundation for supporting this very generously. Over to you, Mr. Chitra. And after that, there will be no bhashan, nothing. Thank you. Or if you prefer, you put them here.
I think on behalf of the Institute, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Sucheta Tai, Dr. Sucheta Paramse, for bringing a whiff of fresh air to the domain of Vedic studies. In fact, our institute has always striven to bring the society as a whole closer to the study of Vedas, Indology, and she has really provided a very magnificent sort of a beginning for popularizing Indology. I would only wish that this is not the end of our association with you, and there will be many more sessions where people can come and benefit from your knowledge and expertise. Very, very grateful. Thanks to you.
So as I said, we will now break for the snacks. We have your certificates ready here. Just a minute. We will be giving you certificates. We have made it in two groups so that from A to sorry, okay. All right, please collect your certificates from me. We know that these certificates are not of much value for your career prospects or for showing it to anyone, but this is like a souvenir, so that you can take away something and you remember that you had such a wonderful time here. Okay, thank you so much, and please join us for the snacks behind where